As I've listened to the stories of thousands of women of all ages, in all kinds of stages, through the years, I've kept their stories locked in the vault of my heart. I feel as if they've been walking around with me all through these years. They've bothered me. They've prodded me. And sometimes kept me up at night. Ultimately, they've increased my passion to reframe and reimagine the powerful positions of mother and matriarch within the family system. I'm a problem solver, so I set out to find a way to perhaps change the trajectory of this silent and sad scenario about a dynamic yet untapped source of potential and purpose sitting in our homes and churches. It is time to come to the table, Heartlifters, and unleash the power of maternal presence into the world. Welcome to Mothering for the Ages, our 2025 theme here on today's Heartlift. I'm Janelle. I am your guide here on this heartlifting journey. I invite you to grab a pen, a journal, and a cup of something really delicious. May today's conversation give you clarity, courage, and a revived sense of camaraderie. You see, you're not on this journey alone. We are unified as Heartlifters and committed to bringing change into the world, one heart at a time. In her transformative new book, Body First Healing, a revolutionary guide to nervous system recovery, Brittany Piper, a somatic experiencing practitioner, speaker, and trauma-trained educator, shares her compassionate, science-backed roadmap for trauma recovery and nervous system regulation. She teaches readers how to break free from survival mode and reclaim their lives using simple yet effective somatic practices. She doesn't just teach it, she's lived it. After enduring foster care, the loss of her brother, and surviving sexual assault, she struggled to find healing through conventional therapy. It was only after finding herself in a jail cell that she took her healing into her own hands. Through years of self-discovery and learning that took her all around the globe, she developed the tools that transformed her life and now shares them with others. And today, Britt is here to share with us. I want to give a little warning. We're talking about trauma and healing from trauma on the cellular level. So if you find yourself triggered in any way, take a break. Just take a break and come back. Okay, let's welcome Britt to the show. Heartlifters, I can't tell you how honored I am to have our next guest, Brittany Piper, author of Body First Healing, which comes out very, very soon. By the time this comes out, it might be out, but who knows? Make sure you get this book. It is truly, I don't throw these words around very much, life-changing. Mm-hmm. And Brittany, do we call you Britt or Brittany?
Whichever. It's about half and half. So it just whatever best for your palate today.
I have been following you and listening to you for so very long. And so I just think of you as Britt in my brain. So I'll just probably call you Britt. Yeah. I've been following you and doing the work that you offer in somatic healing because I know we store trauma in our nerves, in our being. Yeah. And as I just said to you, I was a dancer my whole life. And I think I now know that was how I coped. Mm-hmm. It had to be. The stage became the only place where I felt embodied.
Yeah.
Because I disembodied like you did for many, many years of your life. Numbed my body, all of those things. So first and foremost, a huge welcome from us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
It's just So awesome. And I've told the Heartlifters so much about you. There's that beautiful video that you have that shares the depths of your story. And
Mm.
so, for the sake of our valuable time here, and I'm not going to go deep into asking questions about that because that video is incredible that you created to tell your story, your survivor story. But you talk about in the beginning of the book, this concrete, this
Yeah.
place, right? This concrete place where you came to what we would call an awakening, I guess.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Share a
Oh yeah.
little bit about that
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have kind of our quintessential, I don't want to call it a rock bottom, but a moment where we realize things need to change.
Yes.
And yeah, I can't continue life in this way. And instead of a rock bottom, I had a concrete bottom. So just a little bit of a backstory, some context. Um, at the age of 20, I'm 36 now. I was out one night with friends, and at the end of the night, I realized I had left my phone in a friend's purse. We had all
Ugh.
parted ways. And I was like, oh, got home, left my phone in a friend's purse. So I ventured out into the night by myself, drove to my friend's house, and on the way there, I hit a pothole and ended up with a flat tire. So pulled into a gas station. There's a stranger there. He helped me change a flat tire. Repeatedly offered him money as a way to say thank you, and he just insisted, can I please get a ride? And so,
Can I be a good Samaritan as it was
I,
described on the news? Right.
no, no,
Mhm.
the absolute, absolute
Yeah.
opposite, monster in disguise, and
Oh, Brittany.
yeah. So, yeah, I let him into my car, and we probably don't need to go into the details, but ultimately, what happened is that he was sentenced to 60 years behind bars for sexual assault and confinement. But that's when I was 20.
That's
He wasn't,
incredible.
yeah, but he wasn't sentenced until I was 22.
Hmm.
So the court case, which I work a lot now with violent crimes units, first responders, the military. I do a lot of trauma informed and neurobiology trainings on like the
Hmm.
investigative procedures and working with victims. And this is a story as old as time when it comes to sexual assault.
Yeah. But it's your
When
story.
Yeah, but when a perpetrator does not have a case, they know that they were wrong. The evidence shows that they're wrong. What they'll do instead is, as a defense strategy, their attorneys will essentially postpone or continue the trial multiple times, try to drag it out as a way to
Hmm.
mentally and emotionally exhaust the victim
The
until they
victim.
give up. Yeah, and drop the charges. And so my trial was postponed 9 times,
Wow.
which meant that
Wow.
they call it a continuance,
Hmm.
9 times over a 2-year period. I essentially had to do a dress rehearsal, if you will, with my legal team. So I had to go in, listen to tape statements, go through depositions, pretend being on the witness stand.
Hmm.
9 times I had to relive every, graphic detail of that night. And that was, I often say, more traumatizing than the experience.
Re-traumatizing. Yeah. Yep.
So I was not in a good place in those 2 years leading up to the trial. But on the outside, you wouldn't have known. I
I
seem to have it
understand.
all together.
I
Yeah.
get it. It's awful. I know. We're
Mhm.
called for high functioners. It's
Yeah.
terrible. I get
Yep.
it. Dang it.
But behind the scenes, I was really struggling. Strong substance abuse, really unhealthy coping mechanisms, a very severe eating disorder,
Hmm.
suicidal ideation. I was in a pretty bad relationship. And so, not even 30 days after the sentencing, I was actually out one night. This takes us to the concrete bottom.
Hmm.
I was out one night with my boyfriend who was drinking and driving. And I always say that should let you know where I was at that
Sure. I've
chapter
been
of.
there. I get it. I can't, I get it.
Right. Yep. So he was pulled over, he was arrested, and when the police officers went to just pull me out of the car to give me a ride home, in my impaired state, I went back into a trauma reenactment of a stranger of a man touching me in a car,
Oh,
and I snapped. And
sure you did.
so yeah, I went into a fight response. And this is what has kind of led me down this path is during the assault, I actually did try to fight back. My nervous system went into a fight response, but I was overpowered. Uh,
Mm.
and what we know now from the science of trauma is that trauma is any experience that overwhelms your nervous system's capacity to cope.
Yeah.
And when that happens, your nervous system gets trapped in the survival responses that it enlisted back then to
Mm.
survive, but you're stuck in the here and now.
Yeah.
So during that 2 year period, anytime I would drink, I would become very angry, which is not in my nature. I was always considered a very gentle person.
Hmm.
Very confusing, but that happened that night, and I ended up
Hmm.
in a jail cell with 2 counts of battery on an officer with injury.
Wow.
And yeah, I remember calling my
Wow.
dad from jail, my parents. My dad picked up the phone and he said, "We're not bailing you out. If you continue on like this, you're literally going to kill yourself." And so it was a really hard lesson for me to learn. But I
Ooh.
sat in that jail cell, like this 6 by 8 cell. It was just me in like an orange jumpsuit,
Oh boy.
quite literally. But it was in there for the first time that like I wasn't able to run away or avoid or distract.
Mhm.
Like there wasn't substances, there wasn't
Yeah.
this really crappy relationship, there wasn't anything that I could bury myself in
Yeah.
to run away, distract from all of the pain of not just the assault, but also traumas that had happened before as well in my life and throughout
Well,
my
you
life.
lost your brother, and there's just as we've already said before our conversation here, Dominic, yes, for sure.
Yep.
So early onset,
Yep.
yes. And that's just
Yeah.
secondary because first was really being born and having
Yeah.
being put into foster care. Okay, so you have these layers and layers and
Yeah.
layers.
All these
And
layers.
yep.
And they start coming out in this jail cell. And I had
Mm.
experienced something somatically and in my body that I just wasn't used to. I grew up in an environment where we were really good at like pushing things away or putting it under the rug or pretending like it didn't happen. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which,
Let's
yeah.
repress. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Um,
Let's just
which,
shove it right into that amygdala and that subconscious. Yes.
yes, exactly. Which, can be helpful for a time. And sometimes
Sure.
that's it when life is too overwhelming. But just because you're avoiding something doesn't mean that you're processing and healing it. You got to face it at some point. And so for me,
Hmm.
it happened in that jail cell. My
What a
body
place.
experienced, yeah, it experienced trembling and shaking like I'd never experienced before. A lot of emoting, wailing tears that seemed decades old, if that even
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know that will make sense to my
Yeah.
heartlifters.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so yeah, it was a really profound experience for me. It kind of startled me, shook me, and I was like, what is going on here? What has happened? And then after being in that cell on the third day, I went before the judge who knew who I was for my sexual assault case. And she said,
Oh,
yeah, she said, we're going to drop the charges, which was great news. And then she said, but you need to learn to live with your pain and with your trauma better.
yeah.
And
I wrote
that,
that down and circled it because I just really want
yeah.
that point to make whoever is listening take pause because I think that's one of the most important messages. There are a million, but that judge being so pivotal, having known you, and then telling you, learn to live with your pain better.
Yeah.
Holy cow, Britt.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, what happened inside of you when you heard her say that?
I I think I was intrigued because,
Hmm.
she didn't say, you need to learn to get over it, get past it, move on, which is what we so often hear.
All
She
the
said,
time.
yeah, learn to live with it. And that was a concept that and I had been in and out of therapy for quite some time at that point. And so I think I
Okay.
was trying to like, with the death of my brother, I was 16 when he passed in a car accident. And I remember going to grief counseling and the bereavement centers and all the things and
Mhm.
being like, the goal was to move past the grief, move on
Yes.
from it, get past it, right?
Right.
And so yeah, that was new for me. But
Can I
when I
ask real quick, not to
yeah.
interrupt, but
Mhm.
I mean, once you guys read the book, you'll get the order, but for the sake of this, Was that after your college coaches? I think it was your college. You were in a D1 track and field.
Lacrosse.
Oh, that's right. Lacrosse. I'm sorry. I knew that.
Finger I put up.
I was
Lacrosse.
just reading you were sprinting. So then I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, lacrosse, because your brother played lacrosse and he wanted you to.
Mhm.
They said to you, everybody's got a past. Just get past it. Just move on. So that was before this judge said to you,
Oh, that's such a good point. So the assault happened after I was in college. So
yes.
I got, yeah, the incident that happened when I was in college. So for context, yeah, I
Hmm.
was I drank way too much one night. I
Sure.
actually did 10 shots of vodka in the course of 45 minutes, and I ended up in a hospital bed with alcohol poisoning.
Yep.
Flatlined at the hospital. Yeah, and my lacrosse coaches were not happy because I had stained the image of our team.
Yeah. Right.
I
You
put a
write
stain
beautifully
on.
about that. Sad
Yeah,
story, but one I
yeah,
know very well, sadly.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, but so there is this timeline.
yeah.
And I think the timeline is so valuable because I know how many of us have a timeline. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want everyone listening to, of course, read this book with a highlighter and a good amount of time set aside because this is a guide. This is a book where Britt's blood, sweat, and tears have written it to help us do body first healing. So we can all say the things that have been said to us.
Mm-hmm.
So you hit this concrete floor, and this judge finally says something to you with some sense of empathy in it, with
Yes.
some sense of real wisdom.
Mm-hmm. She was
Because
wonderful. She was wonderful. Yeah.
did that set you on the trajectory of, I mean, because I don't think you knew about somatic healing
No,
at that point.
it changed everything.
Okay.
I felt like she was giving me encouragement. It didn't feel like I was being reprimanded or disciplined by a judge.
Judged.
We felt like, yeah, judged. It felt like encouragement, almost like
Mm.
you can do this kind of thing. And so having that,
Yeah,
yeah, it was really helpful because I was not a big fan of myself at the time. And I'm like, wow,
I'm
look at her.
sure. Look at her believing in me. So
Yeah.
I'm envisioning in my head the star that I love so much, Liv,
Yeah.
right? Olivia Benson on SNL. I mean, I'm just picturing someone like her because I watch that show just so she will speak in my mind, in my head, in my face, and go, "It's okay. It wasn't your fault."
Right.
It's
We
like
all need an inner voice. We do.
I
Yeah.
do.
I
I
didn't
need a
have one at the
picture, and she's my
time. Yeah.
picture. Like it wasn't your fault. It's
Right.
okay. It takes time. All right.
Oh,
So
she
from
was wonderful. Great.
I
But
love
it
it.
was, I would say, what was also the turning point with that experience was how I physically, mentally, emotionally felt different after that experience. So it's what
Mm.
happened in the jail cell
The
and
release, the
the
wailing, the
release. Yep.
gnawing, the
Yeah.
groaning, the mm.
Yeah. I walked out of there feeling different in my body.
How
And
so? Help us understand because you're going to talk a lot about
yeah.
how we feel in our body, which is why I love you.
Yeah.
And what did that feel like if you can connect to that with ease?
Yeah. I didn't feel as afraid. I think that I had
Mm.
felt very disconnected and almost like I was hiding. You would see
Yeah.
it in my posture, you would see it in my downward gaze, you could see it in a mirror. And when I
Hmm.
left there, I didn't feel like I was hiding. It's like I felt more
Mm.
expanded. I felt much more present in my senses. I like to tell people, and I see this sometimes when I work with clients or I've seen other colleagues when they work with clients, is that when we have experiences like this where we're releasing really intense trauma, the charge of trauma,
Hmm.
the residual stress hormones from the past, it can almost feel like you're walking in a new body, like you're Bambi. And it felt like that in some
Mm.
ways. Yeah, it's hard to put into words, but I
Oh,
felt yeah,
it's so hard to put this into words.
yeah, yeah.
So bravo. dear
Thank
one,
thank
bravo, because you have put it into words. And I try to put it into words when, in my own life for sure, but in working with other people, it's like, but
Yeah.
thank God now we have this
Mhm.
resource in your book, Body First Healing, to be able to hand to people and even walk alongside people. Hopefully, there will be
Mhm.
groups and communities and all kinds of things happening as a result of this. And you say the body is the missing puzzle piece. So that's
Yeah.
where you are, like you're coming out of this jail cell. How metaphorical that
Hmm.
is. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry and
Yeah.
not sorry.
Yeah.
I
It's very metaphorical. And I think oftentimes we talk about how when we get stuck in survival mode, a lot of the work that we do in working with the body is working in tandem with the nervous system.
teach us
And
because you right. I was going to get to that, but we can just jump towards that in the
yeah,
back when you talk about the
yeah,
armor of trauma and these five
exactly.
stuck. Because I know a lot of
Yes.
people, and I know myself. I'm sure there are areas I'm still stuck, but stuck is it. You're right. It's like boom, I'm
Yeah.
stuck. You may not be
Yeah. And
stuck on the outside, but like you said, when you got stopped by that cop because of your boyfriend and you got out, he tried to pull you out of the car, you were back
Mhm.
and being 20 again.
Yes. Yeah. You become a prisoner to
Mhm.
survival,
Yeah,
to survival mode. And the whatever armor kept you safe back then, it becomes a prison of, I don't want to say your own making, but your own nervous system's making. you know?
it is. It's
Yeah.
protecting you,
Yeah.
right? Internal family systems is like there are
Mhm.
exiles and firefighters and,
Yep.
that are just trying to keep you going. So
Hmm.
you felt different in your body
Yes.
and you walk out of there. And how do you end up finding somatic
Into this.
healing? And what is that?
Yeah. So at the time I was working with, just conventional therapist, talk therapist. And I think one thing I want to point out, and you said that there was a missing puzzle piece. And I
Yes, the
explained that,
body. Hmm.
yeah, that the body is a part of a larger puzzle, right? But this puzzle piece of the body, just in and of itself and on its own, is also not effective. And so I like to also think of it like a pie. Everyone has their own pie when it comes to healing, and all of our pies are made of different slices, which are really the modalities, the frameworks that help our unique brain body to
Yes.
heal. And so conventional therapy was helpful for a time,
Hmm.
but I felt that there was something missing. And so that's where the somatic work came in. I continued to meet with my therapist, but I did
Hmm.
tell her about what was going on. And she actually referred me to a therapist who was trained in polyvagal theory. So
Oh,
my work
perfect.
actually started in the polyvagal space. So did some
Beautiful.
trainings at the Polyvagal Institute. And polyvagal theory is essentially just the upgraded science of the nervous system.
Okay.
Um, it's a theory in science that was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges in the 90s.
Hmm.
And then he teamed up with a therapist, Deb Dana,
Hmm.
and Deb took all of his science and his big words and she translated it into a therapeutic framework.
Which is so
So,
beautiful. And she gave us glimmers, which is, I love
yes,
her
she
so
did.
much.
I love the glimmers. Yeah, I love Deb. So, but they created the Polyvagal Institute together, which is where they train practitioners and therapists in this framework. So, anyways, I started working with a therapist who had been trained in the polyvagal work.
What
And it
is the
was,
polyvagal? Just because someone's right now going, I'm probably stopping and looking it up because I have a
yes,
very
yeah,
astute audience that loves to learn.
yeah.
Yes.
So the polyvagal theory, which is the upgraded science of the nervous system, Porges discovered, we could say, maybe three founding principles. So the first is that, first of all, we don't just have, the old understanding was that we had two states of the nervous system,
Hmm.
sympathetic and parasympathetic. And we used to think of it like a seesaw or a teeter-totter. So parasympathetic is rest and digest. And then we thought sympathetic is fight, flight, freeze. What we now have discovered is that there is this nerve in our body. it's a cranial nerve known as the vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve, and vagus means wanderer. So it's called the wandering nerve because it touches every organ and connects to our brain.
Fascinating, right? VAGUS.
Yes. Yep. And so the vagus nerve, though, is a often considered the information superhighway of the brain and body. So it
Wow.
sends messages bidirectionally from the body to the brain and from the brain down to the body. And by the way, what we know now from the science is that 80% of those messages go from body to brain and only 20% go from brain to body.
That's worth taking a pause and chewing on that because our gut has what, 500 billion neurons?
Yes.
And our brain has 100 billion as of last count.
Yes. Yeah.
That was mind blowing to me.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So the nervous system, but the nervous system communicates through this vagus nerve. A lot of the messages are sent there. And what Porges discovered is that the vagus nerve has multiple branches. And two of the branches, you think of them as pathways, right? Little detours or side roads. One of them is the vagal pathway. I'm sorry, the ventral pathway. And then the other one is called the dorsal pathway. And he discovered that the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system has two pathways, ventral and dorsal. And so now, instead of just having two states of parasympathetic and sympathetic, we have three states. So let's think of it now in terms of a ladder. I just really like this imagery because
I
I feel
like
like
that.
it's understand. Porges created the polyvagal ladder instead of a seesaw. Now it's a ladder and it has three sections. There's the section at the very top, which is your ventral state, your rest and digest state. There's then a state in the middle section of the ladder, which is your sympathetic state of fight or flight. And then there is a section at the bottom of the ladder, which is your dorsal vagal state, parasympathetic dorsal state of shutdown.
Oh my gosh. This is so liberating. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, I knew that he developed all this in 1990. Do you know I had twins in 1990?
Yeah,
And trauma is so new, really only 2 decades or whatever. But when you said that, I went, oh my word.
Yeah.
Wow. I was carrying not only two children in my womb, but boy, was I carrying so much trauma. Fascinating to me.
Yeah.
How very grateful I am that we're able to help make a trauma-informed world now, which is what your main impetus is trying to do to us. Okay, so we have this dorsal. Okay.
Yeah. So all that to say, he discovered that there is not just two states, there's three states.
Okay.
Digest, fight or flight, which is our sympathetic response. And then there is shutdown, which is kind of like, but it's a little bit different. Think of it as like your hibernation state, your disconnection state, whereas fight or flight is your mobilized state. So what he also realized in his work is that thinking about that ladder, we go up and down that ladder probably 100 times a day. A lot of people assume, that regulation means staying at the top.
Yeah.
And regulation is actually our natural, biorhythm is to go, just like the window of tolerance, we go up and down in our nervous system between activation and deactivation, activation, deactivation, as we face challenges and stress all throughout the day.
Right.
And so for so many people, this is mind blowing because they're like, wait, there are moments when I'm in fight or flight. There are moments when I'm in shutdown. Yeah, multiple times a day, dozens of times a day. And that's actually normal. So a regulated nervous system is one that we call flexible. It moves fluidly up and down that ladder without getting stuck. A dysregulated nervous system is one that is rigid, one that is stuck down in those states of survival, of fight or flight or shutdown. So that's probably the biggest takeaway from the polyvagal.
So good.
Yeah.
Because you say very clearly, it's not about taking the threats away. They won't go away.
Yeah.
It's learning to live with them better. Is that how you clarify that?
Exactly. Yeah. It's how can we, and a lot of people assume that the somatic, in somatics, we talk a lot about this felt sense of safety, right? Feeling safe for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yes.
which is that ventral state of rest and digest is considered your state of safety and connection. And so, yes, it's about starting to build a bridge to safety and connection. I can feel safe inside my body for the first time. I can feel safe in the world. I can feel safe with others. But it's also creating a greater ability to be with moments where we don't feel safe, create a greater capacity. Because that's going to happen when we are, in conflict with our boss, or oh
Mhm.
my goodness, there's a car coming and my kid's about to cross the street and I have to grab them,
Mhm.
every
Or a
every
news story, my goodness, all the
yeah.
things going on with planes, and my daughter's getting on a
Mhm.
plane tomorrow with her 5-month old, and she's feeling, we don't even understand. I like to say we live in a world of overwhelm, but I've been challenged lately on that. And so it's like you're telling us what I'm hearing you say in this work that you do in this current book is that it's not about always feeling safe. There's no way we'll always feel safe, but is it fair to say that you're telling me I can feel safe inside?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
That's the greater work to me in what I've done in my own work with clients and in my own life. It's like when you've been born into the world in an unsafe
mm-hmm.
womb, even.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's womb
Yeah,
wasn't safe.
right.
She was dealing with a lot,
Yeah.
and your mom either. And so you come out already like,
Yeah. 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 A lot of it is, I would say it's maybe not always feeling safe inside, outside, between, but having a greater capacity to return to safety.
oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
To return back up to the top. And I
Okay.
think in, the world that we live in, where we overconceptualize everything and we are scared of our feelings,
Mhm.
and we're also conditioned to not feel our feelings, and our
Mhm.
feelings are bad and they're weak and they're dramatic
Mhm.
and they're all these things. We have made our bodies out to
Mm.
be a very unsafe place to be. And what I
Yeah.
always tell people is that just because it's uncomfortable doesn't necessarily mean it's not safe. Right. So
Okay.
like just because
Differentiate for us. That's good. Really good. That's why I love
so,
you. Okay.
so like just because the clenching in your chest and the bracing in your shoulders and the perspiration from your armpits doesn't feel comfortable, and maybe it's anxiety in this moment or fear,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean the anxiety or the fear isn't safe. Right. Because when and we haven't really gotten into this yet, so I might be
Go
jumping
right
ahead,
ahead.
but
No, go ahead.
yeah. So when we war against the body or push down or suppress emotions, it remains trapped. It remains stuck
Mhm.
there. Right.
Yeah.
So kind of the same thing like we were talking about earlier with healing. Just because we're avoiding something doesn't mean it's processed or it's gone or it's healed. It
No.
just means that we are kicking the can down the road.
Hmm.
And I often say it's like a pressure cooker. Anytime we feel an emotional charge or something that doesn't feel comfortable, and we don't have the capacity or the ability to move through that experience, to allow it to be felt and expressed, what we call
Hmm.
discharged from the body,
Hmm.
and we just push it down,
Hmm.
then over time that pressure cooker is going to either explode or implode.
It
And that
is.
turns into panic, anxiety, worry, rage,
Disease.
outbursts. Yep. Or implode is shutdown, burnout, fatigue, disease, illness. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you for differentiating that because it just makes it so very clear,
Mhm.
because the old adage way before Dr. Peter Levine and Porges and all of these people was, don't poke the bear, don't wake the tiger. So
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, with all of this beautiful emergence of information, we're poking the bear and we're waking the tiger,
We are.
know. And
Yep.
so we have to do that with such wisdom and
Hmm. Hmm.
delicacy. But I think for those who are listening, who perhaps, this is awakening them, maybe even triggering, I will put a trigger warning on this. Where do we start?
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned these 5 stuck personalities. Why don't you give us that and then
Hmm.
maybe give us some hope that
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, one thing I think is important to touch on with the stuck personalities, and I maybe kind of segueing into this with from the latter.
Yes.
I keep talking about emotional charge, but I haven't expressed what that is, and that's kind of the
Okay.
foundation of somatic experiencing,
Okay.
which is what a lot of this book is about. It's another modality that I'm trained in.
Okay.
Um, so when you come down that nervous system ladder,
Mhm.
and by the way, Porges and Levine, you probably know this, they're wonderful colleagues, they're friends, and their work so beautifully blends together. They actually work together to
Which is
create.
phenomenal. Just
Yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah. Their first meeting was back in the 90s, which is
I'm having twins. And I'm
amazing,
like,
right?
help me, God.
Thank you, Lord.
What's
Um,
happening in my
yeah.
life? Right.
So what happens is that when we're up in our ventral state at the top of the ladder, okay, what makes us come down is another concept that Porges discovered in his research is the concept called neuroception, which is our ability to, our body and our subconscious mind's ability to detect threat without our conscious awareness. So you can always think of it like a security system that's working in the background subconsciously, and it's scanning, am I safe or am I not safe? Am I safe? Am I not safe? It's funny. We're sitting here talking about this, and literally the the piece of paper that I have on my desk says triggers, safety and danger with a little security camera.
That's fantastic.
That's
That's
so
from
funny.
your workbook, it looks like.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it
Uh-huh.
is. My daughter ripped it out, so I gotta, yeah, it's just
How
randomly.
old is she now at this time of taping?
She is 19 months.
Oh,
19 months. And then
that's
my
the
son
ripping
is,
stage.
it is, yeah, she's ripping everything. And
And your
she's,
son is,
Noah's 4.5.
oh,
Yeah.
you are busy, my daughter. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I just said daughter, but I don't know. You could be.
Girl,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Don't take that as an offense. It was
Good,
just,
you're good.
I'm so used to
Yeah.
talking to my daughters who are both raising children at that, well, at
Yeah.
this point, 36 and 34,
It's a
38 and
lot.
34.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a
So,
lot. We're in the thick of it right now. Yeah, definitely.
mhm.
Neuroception, right? The security camera. Am I safe? Am I not safe? And this happens in three places. And we call it in the polyvagal world inside, outside, between. So do
Okay.
I feel safe internally in my body, or is, oh, my viscera is clenching, or my muscles are bracing, or I'm dissociating? And it's not like we're thinking this, it's that the body is, this is all happening in the background, right? So am I safe inside? Am I safe outside in my environment? Or am I safe between me and the other nervous systems around me? So we're always scanning the nervous systems around us as well for cues of
Sadly,
danger, right? Yeah.
yes.
They're
Some of
the
us more than others.
Yes. The prosody in their voice, their eyes, their body language, so many things that we are scanning into. So as soon as there is a detection, a neuroceptive cue of danger, that security system says alarm, and the alarm turns on. The thinking brain, prefrontal cortex, which is our like the operating center, think computer wise, that
Mhm.
shuts down. The thinking brain goes offline so that the survival brain, yeah, flip. So the survival brain, the amygdala, can turn on and take over and
Mhm.
keep us protected. So the amygdala then initiates this response of hormones down into the body where we have adrenaline and cortisol and all these wonderful survival hormones to mobilize us to fight or flee. So we
Yeah.
come down that ladder with adrenaline and cortisol to go into a fight or flight response. If fighting or fleeing is not an option, or we're overpowered, or we override it due to our own
Mm.
uncomfortability of being with anger or anxiety, or we've been conditioned to suppress it, then what
Right.
happens is we then go from fight or flight down into shutdown.
Mhm.
However, it's important to note that that adrenaline and cortisol that entered the body up here in the middle ladder at fight or flight, it's still in the body. It's
It
still in the
is.
system. It's what we call the stress response cycle. And
Yeah.
so, what Peter learned through his study of, I always get it wrong, it's either ethology or ethnology, the study of animals
Mhm.
killed, right? As you're talking about poking the bear, waking the tiger,
Mhm.
his book, which was revolutionary, Waking the Tiger, his study of animals in the wild found that animals are routinely facing threat. They're
Yeah.
routinely going into these survival states, yet they don't have traumatic symptoms. And why
Right.
is that? Why do they have this ability to bounce back? And so in studying animals in the wild, he found that they do these things with their bodies that humans don't do. And by the way, we have the same nervous systems as animals in the wild. We're just human animals, right?
Wow.
We evolved
Wow.
from animals. So,
Yes. Yes.
so they do things like shaking, trembling, emoting, right? And it is
Roaring, like
roaring.
roaring. You were
Yeah.
roaring in that cell.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Moving, rolling, right?
Moving.
Yeah. And you were saying
Yes.
with dancing. And so
Hmm.
what they're doing is they are discharging the adrenaline and cortisol
Mm.
that needs to be released and metabolized from the body.
Yeah, the key
But
word
what we do,
metabolized. I love that. Go ahead. Yep.
so that is so crucial because we can talk about our trauma until we're blue in the face, but if we're not taking the time to be in the body and to allow the emotions, feelings, sensations, and impulses of the past that are incomplete,
Hmm.
right, that weren't allowed to happen back then because of
Right.
overwhelm, there wasn't permission to express or whatever that was, that's still trapped within our cells, that's trapped
Yeah.
within our nervous system, and we're stuck. That's that stuckness that you're talking about. We
Yeah.
are stuck in survival mode and a stress response cycle. And over
Yeah.
time, that adrenaline and cortisol, which is stress hormones, creates chronic stress, which creates mental, emotional, physical health issues.
What
In
do we do? Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. Wow.
So the first thing that we do is we have to start to disarm that security system. And it's funny because a lot of people, and I think it's just so much what we were conditioned to do. And whenever
Hmm.
I had a new therapist, I'd just immediately want to jump straight into the deep end of this is my trauma. Let me just dump it on you. Let's talk about it. Let's move through
Yes,
it.
here
Let's
we go
go.
again. Let me
Yeah.
just re-traumatize myself. Yes.
Yeah. But what's actually important to note is that when we go into recall and exposure, that just reactivates our amygdala and it makes us more activated and it gets us more stuck in that stress response
It really
cycle.
does.
Yeah. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to create what we call a felt sense of safety
Yeah.
because the nervous system, it doesn't operate through the thinking brain.
Right.
It operates through the feeling brain.
Sense it. Right.
And so the language of the nervous system is feeling, sensation, emotion, and impulse. And that's why we can't tell or think our way into regulation. We have to show it. So we first have to start by practicing this consistently, showing our nervous system that safety can be experienced. And
Wow.
these are small things. People are like, okay, well, but I don't feel joy in my life. I don't feel love. I don't feel connection.
Mhm.
And no, no, no. It's much smaller than that.
You
We
give us those
sometimes,
steps, please.
yeah,
I have
sometimes
them here. Yeah.
we sometimes say it's stupid simple.
It's so stupid simple. That was what I would
Yeah.
say by the end of my time and learn, because this is like an abyss of learning, if that's the right metaphor. I don't think so, but it's
Mhm.
just like more is getting revealed every day. And so by the end
Yeah.
of my third term, I'm like, it's really just so simple. I want you to go walk in a forest bathing and I want you to breathe these oils and I want, and it sounds woo-woo,
Yeah.
right?
Sounds
You're affirming that.
sounds magical. Yeah,
It
yeah. It
sounds
it
like
sounds magical.
I said,
Yeah,
you're
but
not going to heal by talking anymore. This is a waste of time.
yeah.
At this juncture, when someone's been doing this for years,
Yeah.
I mean, I said, I know that you think this is woo, 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 but you're
Mm-hmm.
affirming that. Okay, so tell us
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
what are these stupid, simple things?
Yeah. So stupid, simple things that you start to do. The first thing that you can start to do is touch in with your sensory motor system. Okay. So the nervous system, again, that scanning we were talking about, it's always scanning in through the senses.
Through
Am I
the
safe? Am I not safe?
senses.
Am I
Mhm.
safe? Am I not safe? Yeah. And a dysregulated nervous system or one that's stuck in chronic survival mode is one that it's a security system that is alarming for danger, even though it might not be there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danger,
Mhm.
danger, danger.
Mhm.
But we're actually okay. The danger is no longer present. So it's more so, how can I start to use my senses to just notice small moments of safety? And when we
Yeah.
say safety, it could be neutral, something that's not activating. So for
Mhm.
instance, I have, what can I pick up? I have a cucumber right here. I was snacking on a cucumber. I was snacking on a cucumber.
Girl.
Okay. I'm gonna use this little cucumber right here. Okay. What I'm about to do is something called kinesthetic orienting. Okay. Where we're orienting to something kinesthetically or through tactile touch.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm
My
going to pull up
senses.
I keep my beautiful Nautilus that I get at the Outer
Ah,
Banks.
there you
Yes.
go.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I
I
got it.
love the animals. So what we can do right now is just start to take time to explore this object in our hands.
Mhm.
And you're just going to notice things like, what's the weight of it? Right? What's the temperature? So this cucumber is still cool. It was in the
Mm.
refrigerator.
Mm.
What's the texture? So just slowly allowing the fingers to just explore the textures,
Mhm.
the grooves, right? The patterns, the smoothness. And then using your eyes, we can now just explore it with our eyes.
Mm.
So I'm noticing these little yellow dots. It's curious. I'm now seeing the seeds on the inside of the cucumber. Right now, my mind is already jumping to like, oh, where were you in the ground? And now I'm thinking about nature, right? So
Oh,
that
yeah.
just took me right into
Your
imagery.
pathway went right there.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
this is just a small way, and I already feel,
Mhm.
if I were to watch this recording back, I feel like my shoulders have actually dropped down a little bit. I've
They
settled.
have. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I have. I
Yeah.
settled.
I feel like my belly is a little bit more expanded. Like I have
Oh.
a full belly of now.
Got a deep
Yeah.
breath. Which are
Yeah.
not
So,
easy to come by for me.
right.
They're
Yeah.
not.
So what we're doing is we are essentially by leaning into the senses, it is such a wonderful way to slow down the system.
Yeah.
Or what I like to say, to catch up to the present because we're so
Mm.
stuck in the past. Yeah.
Which
And
some
so,
people call that mindfulness.
yeah. Yeah. But we're doing it. Yeah. So it could be mindfulness, but being done through the body and the senses. Yeah.
And touching something. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
But the important part is, as we're doing, what we're doing right now is we call it exploratory orienting. So
Mhm.
we're exploring with our senses the space around us, noticing like, oh, the shades of this. I actually never noticed this IFS workbook I have has like a loaded, there's like flowers behind it. I'm just now noticing this time.
So is
Right.
this
And
like that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Like if we
yeah, kind of
just 5
similar.
things we see, 4 things okay.
That's a
Love
great, yeah,
that.
that's a
All
great way
right.
to do
This is
it.
fantastic.
And I think I listed that in the book as one, but the next step to
Yes.
bring somatic awareness is you're then going to do something called, so you're taking cues of neuroception that feel safe. What are my safety cues?
Mhm.
And then you're turning it inside. So then you're doing now something called interoception, where you start to track the body and
Mhm.
essentially ask the question, how is my body showing me right now that this feels safe, that this feels good?
Mm.
So I was tracking like, oh, I'm noticing, I feel like my shoulder my shoulder diaphragm dropped, my belly kind of expanded out. I noticed there were some deeper breaths that I took.
Mhm. Not
Right. And
clenching my
so,
jaw.
yeah. And so
Mhm.
what we're doing is by bringing a conscious awareness to our unconscious somatic experience, we're
Mhm.
creating like these new neural networks in the brain of like, look, I can experience safety for a moment. And
Yeah.
it's this experience which create this somatic experience which creates evidence, new evidence for the nervous system that hey, we can be safe.
Yeah.
And over time, when we've done that consistently, like here's the experience, here's the evidence,
Mhm.
that starts to create new expectation, subconscious expectation of I can expect that I'm going to be okay. Right? Rather than
Yes.
bracing, rather than running away, rather than shutting down and
Mhm.
collapsing.
Yeah.
So that's really the first step. This book, Body First Healing, is based on a program that I created
Yes. Tell us
back
about that
in.
if you would, because
Yeah,
I'm keeping
yeah,
my eye
sure.
on the time for you
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
have a lot. lot to say
Sure.
to a lot more people.
I do. And like I said, I
I know.
am free to hang. The program I created back in 2018, but I like to say it's like a one-stop shop for many slices of the healing pie. So
Mhm.
we explore polyvagal theory, somatic work, and somatic healing through somatic experiencing, somatic attachment work, and somatic internal family systems.
We are not going to be able to touch that, but attachment is a huge part of what I do here. And so
Yes.
we do have a lot of knowledge, but we
Uh-huh.
don't have the somatic attachment. So you're going to have to get Britt's book, and
Yes.
maybe I'll add some things in later and teach from it. But okay, keep going.
Yeah. There's a whole chapter for you,
There
but
is. It's
yeah.
fabulous.
But what I wanted to mention about the program is that the program follows the same pace that we follow and that we guide our clients into in somatic experiencing, which is
Mhm.
this pace of titration,
Mhm.
slowing down the nervous system. Titration is a term that was borrowed from chemistry by Peter Levine for
Mhm.
somatic experiencing. And a titration dropper is a drop of one drop, yeah, into another chemical solution, chemical compound. And there's a drop and it fizzles and then it settles. There's a small reaction. Another drop,
Mhm.
fizzle, settle, fizzle, settle. It's titrated. It's gentle. It's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's not going to overflow. There's not going to be this big reaction. The
Yeah.
nervous system is the same. When you work with the nervous system in a very slow and gentle way, you
Mm.
actually move much quicker. When you work too quickly, you could actually further stress the nervous system.
Yeah.
Um,
I understand that. And that
yeah.
became very much a part of my own awareness of like, I think at times therapists can do more harm, and
Mm,
we have vowed to do no harm.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you're working with trauma clients, it's critical.
Hmm.
It's really critical to understand titration.
Absolutely.
I learned that
Absolutely.
the hard way. I would love for you to repeat that just because I feel like that is the essence of what I've learned from you, that slower is better,
Slower is safer too.
slower is safer,
Yep.
but it actually helps you move along more quickly.
Yeah. So Peter says that slower is faster when it
Hmm.
comes to nervous system and somatic healing.
Hmm.
And I see this all the time. And the reason I was bringing that up is because I said the reason we start with the foundation of safety,
Hmm.
building this felt sense of safety. In my program, it's a 6-month program. We actually don't even get into core wounds and trauma work until month 3. And people
Wow.
are very like, what? When they get
When
started,
are we
right?
getting into it?
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And that's why I was saying, for most of us, we want to get right into the deep work. But
Just I
if
want
we're
to be
not,
better tomorrow. And it's not
yeah,
that kind of work. There's no
right.
way with your life
Oh,
and your story that it could have been quick.
sure. So the reason that we move slower, and I like to use the analogy of a pool, you know, we're used to being thrown into the deep end, what we
Mhm.
call in somatic experiencing the trauma vortex.
Yes.
But that just activates us more, right? Might do more harm than
Yep.
good.
Yep.
You go into the shallow end though, and you kind of dip your toes in to not the trauma vortex, but even think about a vortex like a tornado. We don't go straight to the middle where the centrifugal force is. We work the outer edges. You'll hear an SE practitioner say this all the time. We're just going to work the edges today, okay? Um, and what they mean is like
Fringe.
instead of getting right into the things that you're most anxious about, like that medical anxiety, let's
Hmm.
maybe talk about a moment recently where you just felt a little anxious about something not related, right? And so we start with just smaller, more titrated moments. We
Okay.
track the system. And as you're telling me about that anxious moment, what do we notice in the body right now? Oh, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that. Is that tolerable? Can we be with it for a moment?
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. And then we're with it. And then what we do is we now pendulate. So in somatic experiencing, we practice pendulation, where we
Hmm.
go back and forth between activation and now deactivation. So that might look
Hmm.
like let's do some resourcing for a moment and let's orient. Let's pick up that cucumber. What are you noticing?
Ah.
Oh, now I feel a little bit more grounded. I feel like that heat is kind of dissipating. It went from a level 10 intensity to a level 4.
Hmm.
Great. Can we just be with that for a minute? So
Yeah.
we are again, and then we dip back into the anxiety and then we dip back out as needed. So we're building a client's
Tolerance.
capacity, tolerance, exactly. We are widening the window of tolerance and building a
Mhm.
client's capacity to be with what's not safe, what doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
Um,
So if someone were to say to me or to you, uh, just to give an example,
yeah,
I don't know, today I'm just feeling, I don't know, I'm all out of sorts. I just don't know why I'm feeling this way. I just don't know.
yeah,
And I say to that person, well, how do you feel in your body? Is that a good thing to say second?
yeah. So you could say, how do you feel in your body? Or how is your body showing you you're out of
Mm,
sorts right now? And it's kind of,
okay.
yeah, kind of the same thing.
I like that.
But even as you're saying that right now, I noticed that you were
I
rocking.
started rocking.
Yes. Right? So it's like, I'm just feeling out of sorts. I'm feeling, discombobulated all over the place. Or you could say,
I started
like,
soothing.
yeah, yeah. Or another question is, and as you say that, what do you notice? And so sometimes it might not be, and when we talk about feelings, feelings can be, there's different channels of feelings, right? So for some people, it's, well, I feel anxious or I just feel frustrated. So
Mhm.
they're good at really naming affect and emotion.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't know what the sensation is, right? Okay. And
Oh,
as you
no.
say that anger, what do you sense in your body? Well, I don't know. Right. And for some other people, they're like, well, I don't know how I feel, but I know, like, I don't know what emotion's coming up, but I just noticed that, like, there's a lot of constriction,
Yeah.
like
Feel
right
heavy.
here in this
Hmm.
part. Yeah.
Throat
There's a heaviness.
chakras. Hmm.
Yep. So they're really good at interoception and tracking. So maybe they don't have the emotional language, but they have the sensorial language. And for some people, it's that there is a behavior and impulse that the body is doing. So for you, for me as the practitioner, it's like, okay, I'm noticing what you're doing.
That's
And
so
so,
funny. I
yeah,
didn't even, I know, until I tell you, I'm like, oh God, I am. I'm such a
things
mover.
started
I
rocking.
have to
Yeah.
move. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somatic experiencing practitioners are really trained to, like, observe people like animals in the wild.
Yes.
So I can notice when someone's heart is racing from, like, I'm trained to, like, notice the neck or notice
Biting the
coloration.
lip.
Yeah, biting the lip, or when there's a change in posture, the smallest changes in one of the diaphragms. The body is always showing us and telling us a story of our history.
I know.
And
It's
it's
really
you.
unnerving. Go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. It's
yeah.
unnerving
Oh, it's fine.
but
Hmm.
I think that's something that people have to be aware of. It maybe is the first time in your whole entire life that you've been in a space where your body is safe to feel it.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're telling us. Get
Hmm.
to that person, place, work, therapist,
Yeah.
course,
Yep.
right? Because I so want to experience what that feels like.
Mm,
I'm 65
yeah.
and I don't want to waste one more day of my life,
Mm,
you know, hiding from it or numbing it.
yeah.
And that's a huge yes to say. So
Hmm.
to the person like myself,
Thank you for sharing that.
well, you're welcome. It's hard to sit with someone like you, Britt, who because that's what people think about me if
Mm,
I'm their therapist or their coach. They'll always say, God, you just make me so uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I'm not gonna take that personal. It's like,
uh-huh.
but I have that gift and sometimes it's a curse, but for the most part it's a gift. And I see that with you. And if you can lean into the discomfort, uh, you're going to get free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you did your work, probably are still doing work, I would assume, to
Oh, yeah.
continue to be free. And being
Yeah.
free, I say freedom is really hard.
Yeah.
Being happy is very hard
Mhm.
when you don't know. And for me, the challenge now is feeling at ease. It's
Yeah.
hard to feel at ease when your nervous system has never known that feeling.
Yeah. It's like you
So
have to teach it
I
that language.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's like, I think you do.
Yeah. Yeah. You absolutely do. And it says this in the book, and I say it all
Okay.
the time. clients because they're like, Brittany, this tracking thing, this glimmer thing, this, resourcing thing, it's so hard. Like I don't know what my body is telling me. What do you mean? And
It's funny, but it's so not funny. It's so true. I've
yeah.
watched people experience peace
Hmm.
and go, I don't know what this feeling is.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. What is it?
Hmm.
I think it's peace.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
like it. It's very uncomfortable.
Well, and that's why in my not just in the book, but in the Body First Healing program and in the workbook, there's a
Mhm.
whole, and this comes from the somatic experiencing manual.
Training
Okay.
manual. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Meaning, yes, training. Thank you. Um, you are supposed to give everyone that you work with a vocabulary of sensations.
Perfect.
Okay. So that
Yes.
that wasn't just made up by me. That comes from somatic experiencing.
Okay.
And when you get a vocabulary, I mean, like think about it. It's like when we're learning new
Oh,
words when we're kids, right? Like, oh, I have a quiz today, learning all
well,
these
you
new words,
have one that's
like
learning new words.
language.
And how does that
Yeah,
feel watching your
yeah,
daughter? Like it's
yeah.
it's got to
It's
be
fascinating. It is. It's
fascinatingly one. I healed through so much of watching my children, so
Mhm.
I still am, but they're all grown.
Yes.
So, okay, Britt, we have to close this. Yes, people are going to read this book. What is this? There's just so much to this. You simplify it in an extraordinary way through your own pain and agony. Thank you for living through that and for pressing through to this beautiful place where you are today. First place to start is what you said. Take an object or just
Yeah, starting to find ways, we call it resourcing. So
okay.
finding ways to feel a sense of betterness, okayness, presence, connection.
Mhm.
You can do that with a dog. And as you're
Yes.
petting your pet and just noticing how their fur feels. And then how do I feel in my body? What am I noticing? And
Mm.
I didn't get to this, but I do want to say
Mm.
it just really, really, really quickly. The
No,
reason
please.
I get kind of caught in these little spider webs of thoughts, but
Well, because you're brilliant. Thank you.
yeah. The reason that Peter says that slower is actually faster is because when you start to learn that felt sense of safety, okay.
Mm.
I mentioned earlier that we do this one thing called pendulation, where we dip
Yeah.
into activation and then back out. And if you all could see me right now, I'm making the sign of like a grandfather clock going
Mhm.
back and forth, back and forth. And when we are just stuck in activation and survival mode, you can think like it's like my grandfather clock is broken. It doesn't know how to dip back over into safety, right?
Mm.
And what we do is we gently start to nudge it like, hey, here's a moment of safety. Okay, now come back. Here's a moment of
Mhm.
safety. Now come back. But
Mhm.
we always say that the deeper that you can experience presence, connection, a sense of safety in the body, the
Yeah.
deeper that you can swing that
Mhm.
pendulum into deactivation, the deeper it swings over into activation, but it feels tolerable because you know
Yes.
that there's this safe haven to do it. And so that's the remarkable thing about this work is that it moves through so much, but it
Mhm.
feels gentle. We always say it should always feel
Ch-
gentle, never overwhelming.
I
And
really
so
love that.
yeah, and so that's why the safety is so important. Building this felt
Mhm.
sense of safety because it actually helps you to do the work in a deeper way, but a much more supportive, sustainable way.
Can you give me 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, because I am focusing this year for mamas and mothers and matriarchs and anyone in the mothering world. How have you, as a mother,
Mm,
do you see the affect of all of your work? And I would think it would bring, I know for myself, it brings so much gratitude, even with adult children. And now with my grandchildren,
same.
I can see the affect of the training. And
Yeah.
as you so wisely have said over and over again, the day to day practice of these tools and principles that you're giving us, are you experiencing a deep inner joy that, good girl, you did the work?
I am. I am.
I can
Yeah.
see it on your face.
Yeah, I am. No,
Good.
it's and I don't want to make it seem like it's not easy. Um, I I fell in love with motherhood and I was really surprised by it.
Oh,
Yeah, I waited until my 30s to have kids and
mhm.
I loved it so much that now I'm like, I'm going to be home. Actually, it's funny because I got an email right before you and I got on saying that the school that I applied my little Noah for kindergarten next year, it's a hybrid school of homeschooling and then in person.
Perfect. I did that for homeschooled for 14
Yes.
years. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Oh,
Good,
that's
good.
amazing. He was accepted. So we've been waiting.
Oh,
So I was like, I'm going to be a homeschool mom. So
yes, you are. Well, I'm here for you if you need me.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
So I have completely fallen in love with motherhood, but it has not been, it hasn't always been easy. And there are certainly
Oh,
where I see the the way that my parents attune to me sometimes turns into the way that I attune to my kids.
of
Um,
course.
and but yeah, this work absolutely I feel like is I feel like it's foundational for parenting
I think it
to
is.
know, yeah, to know the science behind the nervous system,
Oh my
to
gosh.
yeah, to know how the brain develops, how we move through emotions, you know, and also considering too that your nervous system as an adult sets the standard for your how your kiddos' nervous systems develops. I mean, their nervous system literally borrows yours for the first 6 years of life.
Mirror neurons, baby. I know. I had
Yep.
taught women a long time. For 20
Yep.
years, I've been teaching decades of women, right?
Mhm.
Mothers. And when I say stuff like that, they go, oh God, I'm screwed. It's like, I'm like, I
Yes,
don't,
it is
but you
a little
need,
terrifying when you think of it that way.
well, because I know I could have said it better, but I know I've learned.
Yeah.
But I tell my own daughters, daughter-in-law, son, it's like you've got to have this information. So everybody has to get this book and hand it out at baby showers and wedding showers because it will help your marriage and it will help your life in general. We all need to understand. I have now concluded that everything in life boils down to our nervous system. Period.
Isn't it wild? Yeah. This
It
one
is
little
though.
been there all along. Yeah.
It's
So
there.
yeah, through our evolution as a creature, the one thing that has helped us to survive through millennia of challenges and
Hmm.
horrible things.
Yep.
It's incredibly resilient when you think about how it's adapted.
Well, weren't
Um,
you so resilient and high functioning? Thank God. I'm
yeah,
so thankful that.
yeah. The one thing I will say is that somatic experiencing. I had mentioned that it's a naturalistic approach to trauma recovery.
Mhm.
Naturalistic. Peter put that in there strategically because it brings us back to our own human
Primal
nature.
root.
Like
Mhm.
our primal roots, the way that we were so wonderfully, brilliantly designed to self-heal.
Yeah.
We are self-healing, self-regenerating creatures. If we just give ourselves the chance and give our body the chance to move through hard moments, it'll really surprise us what it can do. So we have all the answers. Sometimes we just don't know how to find them.
Our bodies are regenerative and we have hope. You are giving us so much hope. Thank you so much for being an illuminator and being someone that is sharing wisdom. I appreciate it. Whew, Heartlifters, I told you. This is a masterclass condensed for us into 1 hour. 60 minutes of wisdom, hard-earned wisdom that we can apply and activate in our lives today. I have pages of notes, and I have followed Britt for a very long time, but this new book, Body First Healing, is a must. If you yourself have not experienced trauma, praise be to God, but we will all know someone in our lifetime who has. And so I want all of us to be trauma informed at least, and if you feel so inclined, trauma trained. For more information, go to traumahealing.org or visit Britt's site, bodyfirsthealing.com. And be sure to meet me over on Substack at Heartlift Central. All you have to do is put at Heartlift Central in your Google search and you will find your way there. If you have any problems, please contact me. Until next time, Heartlifter, remember, you have value, worth, and dignity. And I encourage you to go heartlift someone today. Yeah, go make someone's day.